started. It seems like we have everybody here.
Everyone should get a pop-up saying it is now live stream. Just click got it and that will go away. So in the upper left-hand corner, you will see that this meeting is now being streamed live on YouTube.
And then I imagine, Naomi, while I still have you, there will be a brief pause when this meeting ends, and then I resume in my section with channel 1 again. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, and we'll have to relink because it's a new Zoom.
Right. Okay, of course. So then I'll see you again around 1:30. Okay,
correct. Yes, and I will stick around. We are also, we have student workers attending and myself to take screenshots for posting on social media on the Instagram story. We'll do more curated posts later over the break, but we like to do some live stories during reviews. So we'll be popping in and out. Carrie, I'm going to make you host again.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Naomi. And to all the student workers that are helping to facilitate this process, thank you. So I think we should just get started. Welcome everyone. I'm Carrie Norman, coordinator of this studio. So thank you for joining us. This is our first day of final reviews. I do have a brief presentation on the studio and our site, but before moving into that, I'd like to quickly introduce our impressive lineup of jurors. Between our 2 days of reviews for this studio, we have jurors joining us all the way from Germany and Canada, as well as New York, Texas, North Carolina, and of course, Louisiana. So today we are joined by, and if you could wave perhaps when I hit your name, then we will identify you. We are joined by Vivian Lee, Assistant Professor and Director of the Masters of Architecture program at U Toronto, and co-founder of Llamas Architecture. We are also joined by Molly Hunker, Assistant Professor at Syracuse University and co-founder of Sports Collaborative. We are also joined by Randy Hutchison, founder of Randy Hutchison Architecture in New Orleans, in addition to Marcella Del Signore, Associate Professor at New York Institute of Technology, Francisco Gomez, Assistant Professor at UT Austin, Ruth Berchtold, founder of Yes Architecture in Munich, Ramiro Diaz, architect and urban planner at Wagner and Ball Architects in New Orleans, and Matthew Griffith, founding principal of In-Situ Studio in Raleigh, North Carolina. And from Tulane, we are joined by Dean Iñaki Alde and professors Nimet Anwar, Charles Jones, Nick Jenish, Omar Ali, Judith Kennard, Margarita Jover, Marianne Damaris, and Adam Modisett. So with that, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me. Here we are. Can everybody see it? Perfect. Okay. Well, the students have heard me say this a bunch recently this past week. It's sometimes hard for me to believe that we've made it here. For some context for our jurors, this has been an extra challenge-filled semester. On top of the ongoing pandemic, we have endured a major hurricane requiring us all to temporarily evacuate the city. So we've been through a remote, hybrid, and an in-person teaching environment this semester. We have experienced power outages, Wi-Fi and HVAC failures, and even an electrical fire. Some of the students were displaced from their places of residence and relocated to nearby hotels, and others suffered computer and other equipment damage, but we've made it. And before we begin, I want to just thank all of the students and the teaching team for their commitment and resolve throughout these challenges. So thank you all. To begin, I'd like to introduce our teaching team. We really do have an exceptional teaching team this semester. The teaching team represents an extraordinary array of experience and accomplishment, perhaps more than I have ever taught with. The team includes veterans of this studio, faculty new to Tulane, faculty from the thesis program, former coordinators of second year, a former associate dean of the school, and multiple faculty who teach core studios and courses of the architecture degree. And now the studio. The curriculum of this studio places emphasis on architecture arising through section and site. Put another way, the focus of the semester is on the relationship between landscape and building. Guiding our inquiry into this relationship, we consider these 4 prepositions. And when considered relative to the ground, they offer up sort of basic sectional dispositions or strategies. When we think of the term in, we might think of carving into the solidity of the ground versus the figure of architecture, inhabiting the in-between, and reclaiming architecture as program in a space of passing through. A word like on, thinking of architecture as a new ecological ground or the calibrated intersection between land and water, or architecture as a thickened edge. With above, architecture as an urban vertical condition, intersecting the site as a translated field condition, and so on. So in this studio, ground is no longer accepted as the default abstract horizontal plane, but as a conditional, relational, aesthetic, and contextual site. The studio is formatted around 2 projects. The first, A Room with a View, tasks students with designing a small structure sited within an artist's representation of a landscape. So here, students are offered a selection of landscape views, either painted or photographed, to choose among. The view is first analyzed and then reconstructed. Reconstructions involve the making of 2.5-dimensional relief models or peep shows that recast the view as a stage set. So here, and through the introduction of scale figures, students work through questions of how the site might be occupied and by whom. Reconstructing the site also involves drawing it according to architecture's primary projections, such as plan, section, and axonometric. So the studio focuses not only on the role of the landscape in architectural design, but also prioritizes the development of basic skills in site analysis, site design, and site representation. At Tulane, second-year students and first-year graduate students have co-requisite courses in site strategies taught by Professor Margarita Joubert, and digital media, a representation course that prepares students with foundational skills in digital architectural production, co-taught this year by myself and this year's Architecture and Urbanism Fellow, Omar Ali. Project 1 concludes with the design of a small building with a room for which the landscape can be viewed. The program for the room is a studio and gallery for the artist. The remainder of the semester is devoted to Project 2. Like Project 1, students are tasked with defining site beyond an abstract set of property lines, and additionally engage the material and immaterial properties that form it. These include, but of course are not limited to, changing physical, social, political, economic, and material histories of a place. Ultimately, the studio considers the effects that these properties have on the social, formal, and programmatic identity of a civic institutional typology. Here, the Environmental Education Center, situated on Jefferson Island, Louisiana. Jefferson Island is one of 5 salt dome, quote unquote, islands that form prominent topographic landmarks amidst the cane fields and tidal marshes along the central coast of Louisiana. These islands have unique ecosystems and a rich geological, economic, and cultural history. 2 of these islands are represented on this map: Avery Island in the lower right corner and Jefferson Island in the upper left corner. Avery Island is actually where Tabasco is produced. And Jefferson Island was once the center of a bustling salt and oil mining industry. The term island here is used loosely and refers to these sites unique topography, separating them from the rest of Louisiana's otherwise flat landscape. And what we see above ground as hills is the product of a salt dome structure beneath the surface. So I apologize, but I have a very brief history lesson for you today. Beginning millions of years ago, when the earth was covered by salty oceans and inland seas. Over time, when the water evaporated, fields of salt were left behind. The concentration of salt domes in the South, and indeed Louisiana, are a product of fluctuations of the Gulf of Mexico. Over the course of thousands of years, the salt fields were covered by rocks and other sediment. With salt being more buoyant, it would move upwards through these layers. And it is this upward movement that forms the domes and pushes the terrain vertically around them. So here, an illustrative cutaway of a typical salt dome. Domes can be 1 to 5 miles across and reach as deep as 10,000 feet. Important to note here, it is not just salt present in these domes. If you look closely, you'll find oil, gas, sulfur, and other resources along the salt dome's edges. And all three of these resources were mined at times concurrently at Jefferson Island. The salt mining operations at Jefferson Island were quite extensive. Here you're seeing what's called the room and pillar method of mining. Room and pillar method is a method of extracting a series of rooms or long horizontal openings while leaving behind pillars, structural pillars of salt. Note the person for scale. Above ground, extensive networks of transportation infrastructure were constructed over water and over land to move the mine materials off-site. So as mentioned, salt domes are prime places to drill for oil and natural gas. And in 1980, an oil rig contracted by Texaco was doing some exploratory drilling above the salt mine. An error in calculations resulted in the oil rig's 14-inch drill bit becoming stuck and piercing a cavity of the salt mine. So in a matter of hours, a major sinkhole would develop, swallowing the drilling platform, 11 barges, a tugboat, several trees, along with 65 acres of the surrounding terrain. So much water drained into the mining cavities that the flow of an adjoining canal reversed, causing salt water from the Gulf of Mexico to flow into the drained lake bed. The backflow created the tallest waterfall in the state of Louisiana at 164 feet, accompanied by 400-foot geysers springing from the mine shafts. Today, little evidence remains from the site's mining history. So much is hidden below ground or built over. Aside from a few relics from its past, the site today is mostly visited for its lush landscape and botanical gardens. One of the surviving structures includes this home, the Joseph Jefferson Mansion, built in 1870. Now listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the home remains a standing example of Victorian-era Southern plantation-style homes. And near the water's edge, toward the north of the island, lies a portion of the former salt mining operations, including the concrete foundation and one of the original air shafts. Here are some remaining piles of the former loading pier. And here, perhaps most curiously or visibly serving as a reminder of the drilling disaster, is the presence of this chimney poking out of Lake Peigneur. When the sinkhole swallowed 65 acres of the surrounding land, a smaller guest house on that land was also taken with it. So in sort of summary, it's quite a complex site. So at the beginning of Project 2, students begin with research presentations covering a wide but focused set of topics. Next, they take on an analytical set of drawings focused on revealing hidden features from the site's history. And following research, analysis, and a site visit, students select one of 4 sites within the island. The 4 sites represent distinct sectional conditions and may be described as 1, perched on the hilltop, 2, inserted into the hillside, 3, occupying the mine site at the water's edge, and 4, occupying the space of the former loading pier. So like project 1, the site is drawn in plan, section, and axonometric prior to beginning any design work. And then lastly, for the last 5.5 weeks or so, students have been working on design proposals for this environmental education center. So you can see the program breakdown here. And at this point, I'm open to taking any questions or clarifications that the jurors might have. Any questions? Great. Well, thank you all again for joining. I think we have a couple minutes actually to take a bathroom break or get a coffee refill before joining the kind of individual studio Zoom session. So if there are any questions, we can break here and then find each other again in individual sections at 1:30 Central Time.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Spot on.